I very rarely have seen people who have gone, for something that was meaningful to them, who didn't ultimately succeed. And
Yeah.
the thing that's crazy that I found is, even if they didn't succeed, it led them someplace else that they were even happier. It was kind of the doorway to get them to this other place. So.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Code Show. We are thrilled to have you here. I've got a good friend of mine, somebody that I met many years ago. I can't even remember how many years ago we met, but he was somebody that I had known about back when I was in college, because he was a very successful, accomplished basketball player in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So I went to the University of North Carolina. He did not go to that school. He was a rival, and he tormented us back in the day because he was really good and his team was really good at University of Virginia. His name is Jeff Lamp. And so I knew of Jeff. I'd seen him play back when I was in college. He's a little bit older than me, but I'd seen him play. And then one day, Jeff, I don't know if you remember this, but I was living in Cardiff, which I think you were living in Cardiff too. Is that right?
Yeah, right nearby Encinitas.
Yeah, and down in the San Diego area, and I was at a little park down there, and I see this guy shooting baskets, and I think maybe you're with your son, or I can't remember, and my kids were pretty little, but I'm like, hey, that guy looks pretty familiar, and then we had a little conversation, and then I think it was several years later when my son Tommy started playing basketball, and he had been a very good soccer player and baseball player. And then all of a sudden at age 12, basketball is not his best sport. He goes, Dad, I want to focus on basketball. I'm like, what? and then he got on a team, and we found, that team that we got on, you were training one of the other kids. And right. So Jeff became one of his early mentors, and really teaching him basketball and how to shoot. And then we've just kept in touch through the years. Jeff has had an accomplished career, not only in college, where he's an All-American basketball player. He was drafted in the first round of the NBA draft at number 15 slot. We'll talk about that in a minute, because the draft was just held recently, and we were lamenting on, if he were a recent day player, how much he could have made. Even in college, now the college athletes are making so much money. Back when you were there, you didn't make anything except your little scholarship stipend. Yeah. So we're going to talk about some things. Jeff had an NBA career. He also played over in Europe. He played on different teams in the NBA, the Trailblazers, Milwaukee Bucks, San Antonio Spurs, and then won a championship with the Los Angeles Lakers, which is super exciting. But for the past 22 years, he's been doing something really cool. And he's done cool things throughout his life, but he's been mentoring through the NBA Players Association, young players, basketball players coming into the league, and really mentoring them, teaching them how to prosper beyond basketball. So I'm sure a lot of it, the mindset, that's helping them in basketball, but a lot beyond basketball. So I want to dig in with you, Jeff, and really figure out what you're teaching people, because you are such a great mentor. You understand the breakthrough code and a lot of the things that have to happen for breakthrough thinking. So welcome to our show. It's really great to have you on here.
Well, thank you, Tom. And thank you for that. Very nice, probably too nice of an intro. But I appreciate all the kudos and accolades that you threw my way. You may not remember this, but in addition to what we did for your son and just some of the basketball things, I had come to you just for some advice right after I got done playing. When I was kind of hanging up and looking for my next step in life, basically, when I was done with basketball. And you were a huge help to me at that point, just kind of helping me prioritize what I was interested in, and helped me a lot with, identifying my values. And that was a real stepping stone for me. And I don't even know if you remember that, but it helped me get into the line of work that I'm doing now, because I knew I wanted to continue to work with people, make an impact. I saw the work that you were doing. And so maybe with a little different mindset or a little different direction, I wanted to continue that. So that was a huge thing for me. And it's been a pleasure for me all these years now to watch you and just see you go from one success to another, and the continued growing impact that you're having on other people. So I have been a fan from not too far, but it's been great to see that. So
yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. I want to go back to your childhood, because one of the stories and it might have been when we were talking about what you're going to do with your career, or I can't remember, but one of the stories that's always stuck with me, and I've told it to several people because it's such a great story, is in 7th grade. So here's a guy that played in the NBA, everybody. In 7th grade, you got cut, not from your varsity basketball team, high school, from your 7th grade team, right? Your 7th grade team.
That's not easy to do either.
It's not easy to do. And then I think you said in 8th grade, you played in 2 games, and then take the story from there, because something happened that created a shift in your mind. And from there, you obviously became very successful. I think, what state were you living in at the time? Was it
Kentucky?
Kentucky, were the Mr. Basketball in Kentucky in high school. You were an All-American at University of Virginia. You were a first-round draft choice. But what happened back in 8th grade that started to create this shift where you were able to step up into your potential?
What I think one of the great things in life is when you can instill in people a sense of what they can do that maybe they don't have themselves. So basketball for me was not a place for success. Having, like you said, having cut from my 7th grade team. 8th grade, I got into 2 games towards the end of the game. Was playing a pickup basketball game with some friends after school one day, and the high school coach happened to walk by. He stopped, watched for a few minutes, and stopped us from playing, walked right up to me and said, "You damn well better be at freshman tryouts next year."
Yeah.
And, I was too scared not to show up. But the thing that was great about him was he saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. Yeah. I think he saw a tall kid, maybe kind of athletic. I was incredibly skinny, but I think he may have seen just some athleticism there. But under him, I had 4 amazing years in high school with him and the coaches that work with him. But just as you're saying, the huge thing is that mindset change. He made me think that I was supposed to be great. Yeah. I certainly didn't have that self-image myself, but someone I respected, someone I looked up to, someone who I knew was very knowledgeable about basketball, told me I should be great. So I just kind of adopted that. I put that uniform on, so to speak. And so my expectations were incredibly high from that point on. But it's just the power of what one person can do to change your sense of self.
That is so cool. And I think that's so critical as leaders, and we're all leaders, understanding the power of our ability to help influence people to step up. As a dad, and I'm a dad, that's one of the most important things I've always done with my children. And actually in all the coaching I do, I always see people so much greater than they see themselves. And then my job is to help them start to embrace that the same way that coach did for you. Now, one of the interesting things was you had a great high school career, Mr. Basketball in the state of Kentucky, which is known for basketball, and then All-American in college, first-round draft choice. But then the opposite of that happened to you, because I remember you told me this story too. The coach of the Portland Trail Blazers, I think you said the general manager really loved you. And, you were an athletic guy. You can't see how tall he is, but he's a pretty tall guy. And he won the slam dunk contest, I think, at the McDonald's All-American contest.
Came close. I think I came in second, but close.
Came in second. Okay. Yeah.
We'll count it as a win after all these years.
Yeah. But great shooter. And then gets drafted number 15 by the Portland Trail Blazers. General manager really wanted you. The coach wanted like a 7-footer or something like that. And so then you experienced almost like the opposite of what your high school coach did, where the coach was trying to find a reason for you to fail, right? Talk about that a little bit and how that impacted you.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, going from all that success that I had in high school and college, one of the huge kick to the guts that I got was very first game in the NBA. I didn't get off the bench, uh, didn't play a minute. Actually, went on 2 or 3 more games in a row that I didn't play. The coach had a concept of how he wanted things to be done, and I do think that he and the general manager may have gotten into a little bit of a power struggle. There was a big guy that he had wanted. And I had great players in front of me. So even regardless of whatever power struggles there might have been, it would have been hard for me to get off the bench much anyway that year, because they were, like I said, great established players ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right though, that kind of the opposite effect of losing confidence, and the person that you're now looking up to, who's judging your performance and your play, is not pleased with you, does not think you're good enough. So, it's interesting because you learn how to win, learn how to be confident, learn how to be successful.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't call that failure, but you almost need to learn how to fail, or how to be able to process when you're failing or not living up to what you think your expectations of yourself are.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And also learn, and you were a young guy. I mean, you were 22, 23 years old, right?
Yep.
Now you probably would have handled it much differently, right? Like, I got this, right? But back then we're so impressionable, and an older person that doesn't have that belief in us, just like when someone did have belief in you, you rose up. It's as a young person, it's a very valuable lesson. That's why I wanted you to tell the story. We have to believe in ourselves no matter what's going on. In certain situations, we may have a boss, we may be an athlete on a team. My son experienced it on a team in college where he started his freshman year and then had a hard time playing. Now, part of it was because of injuries, but had a hard time getting off the bench the rest of his career. And I had to talk him off the ledge, several times, because he was killing it in practice, like crushing it. But I don't know what the dynamic was, but it just wasn't happening. But I told him, this is going to make you better in life. And I also told him, I said, go into every practice and do your very best. Go win every practice. If you're not playing in the games, make practice your games, right? And he really went and did that, and it built him up going through that.
There's a process, so he had jumped up a higher level in terms of athletic ability and competition. I did from college to the NBA.
Yeah.
Anything in life, there's a process. And, it's part of that is like you're talking about, just put your head down and work. Make practice your games. If you're not getting in the games, and just, show up, be prepared, but be willing to do the work and go through the process. But it's, I think the emotional part of it. And one of the things that I found farther along that I went in my basketball career, the less physical it became and the more mental and emotional it became. Those started to make a much bigger difference. And being able to process all of that and then just continue to move forward, give yourself time to grow. And it's a difficult thing to handle emotionally. Once you get past that, I think, and you're talking about your son, once you get past that and just start doing the work and doing the best you can in the situation you're given, I think that's when things really start to turn around. Whether you get playing time or whether you get opportunities or not, at least you're giving yourself that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. And just really quick, just because I thought it was kind of funny when we were talking beforehand. So players these days now drafted at number 15 are making how many millions of dollars a year?
They're making multiple, they're I think upward of 2 million a year, maybe a little bit more, for 3-4 year contracts.
Yeah.
It was not my experience. No, when I got
a tenth of that, right? Or not even a tenth,
or even less. Yeah.
But
I can't complain because there are Hall of Famers from the 60s, and I made more money than they did. So it's all relative.
Yeah. So one of the teams you were on, before we jump into how you mentor people, one of the teams you were on won a championship. That was, what year was that with the Lakers?
That was 88-89. So that season.
Yeah. So what did you learn from playing on a team that was that talented, and what did you take away from that experience? I know you were injured, I think, a lot of that year, but still being part of that, what was that like, and what did you take away from that?
Well, I was fortunate enough because this was the Lakers during the Showtime era. So it was
Yeah.
Magic, Kareem, James Worthy, Pat Riley was the coach. Um, so there was a lot of success. So the first year with the championship year, I was injured much of it. I came back and played the next year. We went to the finals because of injuries to Magic Johnson and Byron Scott. We lost in the finals, but in almost equally successful year. The year before I joined the Lakers, I played for the San Antonio Spurs. We ended up losing, I think, 25 of our last 30 some games. And just the culture in that locker room it was crazy because it was everybody about themselves and knew the team wasn't going to do well. And everybody's playing for their next contract or getting minutes, that kind of thing. So when you go to the Lakers, who was led by people like Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Pat Riley, obviously, it's all about wins. And I remember in the NBA, you practice, but once the season hits, the starters don't practice a lot or very hard. This was the first time in my NBA career that the starters, even in practice, would still win all of the scrimmages. And that's usually they're just kind of tanking or walking through, but not with them. And at that time too, so these are great players. They're playing for big contracts and all that, but their thing was always, we're all going to get paid if we win. It's kind of how they measured themselves, and everything was just about winning or losing, and overcoming the challenges, just seeing the work that they put in, seeing that it truly was about team and winning. If somebody averaged 16 points or 20 to them, it didn't matter. On other teams, it might, because it might mean a difference in your contract, but Magic kind of was our spiritual leader in every way, really. But it was just all about wins, and everybody did whatever, everybody did their role. To walk into a locker room like that, it's truly amazing because there's a common goal, which isn't about you. And it's really inspiring to be able to have something that you're working for that isn't just about you, but about a group of people. And you hear those analogies all the time, but to me, it really does bring the best out of everybody.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And so you've been working with the NBA Players Association now for 22 years. Take us through what you're doing with, and I don't know, is it just young players, or are you working with players at any stage in their career? Who are you working with in terms of players? Not names, but what types of players are you working with? And then take us through the process of what you're helping them to understand so they can be successful, not just on the court, but beyond the court.
Yep. So first off, they're all young to me, but even the veterans. But we really start to introduce ourselves to the players as rookies. In fact, we'll be going to Las Vegas soon. The summer league will be starting up, and we'll be there and have a presence with the rookies and get to know them a little bit. But any age, any position, any time in their career is really when we work with the players. And certainly there's a lot of work that we do once they retire, the next few years after they retire or they stop playing. The whole point really is, number one, just to help them understand what's available to them, help them identify, obviously basketball is their passion. And truly, I mean, I've never experienced anything professionally that compares to having played NBA basketball. They probably may not either, but there are still other passions in life. And a part of our job, part of what I do, is help them understand what those passions are and maybe help them explore, because they may not know. These players are, again, I'm biased, having been a former player, but they're just so gifted in so many, certainly athletically, but just in terms of being able to process information, decision-making, dealing with stress, dealing with pressure, competitiveness, all of those things. But to see that light bulb go off in players when they understand that there are other things and maybe have identified a passion, something that they want to do, to me, that's probably the most gratifying thing. We talked about my high school coach earlier, kind of the light bulb went off for me because he thought I could be something on the court. But to see these guys recognize other parts to themselves, other areas that they can contribute, other areas that they can develop in, that's really for me where the true joy in all of this is. Once that's done, it's a pretty simple process to get them where they want to go. Because one of the things we do, so education's a big component. There's a benefit for them to get reimbursed for most of their education if they do go back to school, because there's such a emphasis right now on leaving school early. But so that's one. The other thing is we just try to get them in front of great people, really successful people. We talk about, getting them in front of the NBA players of whatever field or industry they're interested in, because that's really where the expansion of what's possible. They can kind of see behind the curtain and see how these guys got successful, what it took for them, and realize that there's not a ton of mystery. Yeah, there's a lot of talent and hard work, and people have different abilities, but know that there is a path or a process. So a lot of the players end up getting mentored by some of these people, so they can kind of jump right in and go through that process. And we try to get them experience, job shadowing, internships, just following people around, whatever it might be, but just to put them in front of people. And then we just, obviously, like anything else, we put a plan around it. And these guys are busy during the season.
Yeah.
So, we look at summer to kind of chip away, and hopefully after 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, whatever it may be, that they've really started down a second path. And, we always understand current players are many more doors are open to them than former players. And because they're in the public eye. Yeah. But it's just going through that process. And it's just been great to see, because players, we have a former player that liked real estate. So he dabbled a little bit. We have a real estate program we put on the summer that he attended, met some people. He has grown into, now in downtown Minneapolis, he's put multiple hundreds of low-income housing projects together. Now, this is a guy that won 3 NBA rings, but he says that he goes to sleep at night just as proud, if not more so, of helping those families have housing than he does, with all the rings. But that's an extreme example, but it's just,
love that. Well, you almost made me chuckle there when I was envisioning. You said job shadowing, so like NBA player following you around some big tall guy. How do you help them find what they're passionate about? Because that's something that is interesting to hear, how an NBA player finds something beyond basketball. But I think it's something that's universal. Like, we're all searching for our passion, something that we can really tap into, sink our teeth into, jump into, both feet. Like, how do you help them find that?
One of the big things that we do, we sometimes go through this exercise, and the woman that leads our group, this is kind of her mantra, but to envision the life you want to live, and just what does your work situation look like professionally and every area. Part of it is just trying different things. For example, when I played, I always thought maybe going into broadcasting would be a cool thing. Kind of looked that direction, but once I actually tried it, I realized I didn't like it that much, and importantly, I wasn't very good at it. But so for us, it's a win if guys try something and they don't like it, because then at least they know. But a big part of it's just brainstorming. Back in the day when there were actual bookstores, it'd be like, well, if you go into a bookstore, what section are you going to go to normally? But we just take them through these processes. We brainstorm a little bit, and just identify 3 or 4 things that maybe they can try, and then we'll set up situations so that during the summer they can get their feet wet a little bit and trying that out. But some guys know right away, some guys don't. I guess like all of us, it's just, I think, kind of going through the process of trying to identify areas of interest, and then, like I said, get your feet wet.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you look at players, what separates? It was interesting watching the NBA playoffs this last year, which just completed. You had a team, Miami, who had what, 2 or 3 undrafted players playing like critical role and
Right.
actually stepping up and, making big things happen. And then, you had, well, even on the Denver team, a second round pick was the best player in the championship, right?
Yep.
So what do you see as the separators from people that end up being, because everybody that gets drafted has talent, and then obviously people that don't even get drafted have talent, right? What are the separators you see where somebody just takes it to another level versus settling in and just having a nice career, but maybe not optimizing their full talent?
So I think there's a couple one big thing is opportunity, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, so many players, all the players in the NBA are great,
Yeah.
obviously. Even the players that don't quite make it there. If you're
Yeah.
playing Division I college basketball or in the G League, you're great.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to opportunity. So Miami, for example, those players that were playing critical minutes who went undrafted got that opportunity. It's
With a
one
team that valued just like grittiness and toughness and things like that, right?
Yep, exactly. And what they were able to bring to the table.
Yeah.
So the opportunities, number one. So it's one thing to get opportunity. It's another thing to be able to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I find is so great, or find amongst the really great, is that the moment doesn't become too big for them. Because these are young people playing in the NBA finals, and it's incredible pressure. And when that moment is not too big for them, that's when they're really able to grow and develop. One of the things that I think we touched on a little bit earlier that I think is huge is the ability to bounce back, to have a bad game and still, even when the pressure's on, to be able to trust yourself enough to be able to take those shots, or guard the other team's best player, or whatever it might be.
Not define yourself by that last performance, which is what a lot of people do. And it's not just in basketball. Like people that, come to me say, I'm not a great speaker. Well, how do you know that? Well, I've done some before and they weren't very good. Well, that was the old you, right? That's not you today. And so players are able to compartmentalize it, leave it behind, but still have that belief that they have greatness in them.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of NBA players, not a lot of people, they have their confidence level is almost insane. They're probably in life too confident, but I think at that level you need that. But we call it having a short memory. It's like, I don't remember the mistakes, and let me just go on because the next shot's going to go in, so to speak.
Yeah.
One of the other things, though, Tom, that for people that like Nikola Jokic was the second round pick that you referred to on Denver, who has been an MVP in the league twice, was MVP of the finals. It's one thing to have talent, it's the other to develop it. And someone like him, you would never know this, but because he doesn't have the most athletic looking body, but after every game religiously, he goes in to the weight room and does his weight workout and does some additional cardio. This is after a game that he's played 40 minutes when there's travel a little bit. But so just the dedication to improve. Yeah. And some of the players are just off the charts in terms of how much work they put into it. Yeah. They wake up early. They'll stay after games. They'll do extra practice work. But, I think a lot
Kobe
of that.
Bryant used to do that, didn't he? Didn't he work out after games? And
who was that?
Kobe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of this culture has come from Kobe, that Mamba mentality, because most of these players grew up on Kobe, and they know his story and his crazy work ethic, and that's a huge part. Just being willing to put in the time, which I guess more time than most do. Yeah, develop your skills.
Well, and it's time not where you're getting acclaim and people cheering for you. It's time when no one's there. And you're sweating and it hurts. And that can be done in any profession, right? Practicing, meditating, visualizing, mentally rehearsing things. No one's seeing it. You're not in front of a customer, or you're not in front of a team that you're leading, but it all matters. Everything matters, instead of, just getting on Instagram and, tweeting away or whatever else
Yes.
people do with free time. And with NBA players, it's enticing. You're making a lot of money. The extra workout, that's not the most fun thing to do, but the people that are great, they'll put the time into doing that.
Had talked a little bit earlier about getting these guys in front of great, successful people in other areas. So I've been fortunate to meet a lot of incredibly successful people just in this life. It's funny how the story's always the same. It's that crazy work ethic and just grinding and grinding and grinding and doing the extra work that people don't normally do. Ability to bounce back. We do a lot of programming around tech. So we've gotten to know a lot of the people in Silicon Valley. They've all failed.
Yeah.
It's almost a badge of honor for them, but to have failed and learn from it. And but again, the story's all the same. It's just that a lot of it is just the crazy work ethic and being willing to do things that usually most people won't.
Yeah. It's interesting too, in the NBA, players are going into a profession that will not be their last job, for most people. I mean, maybe, well, probably, they, even if they're investors or things like that afterwards, that's more their job. So you're going into something, like a lot of people go into something thinking, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. They may be thinking that, but that's an illusion, right? Because they're not going to do it for the rest of their life. What's the average career span for an NBA player?
It's a little over 4 years, but this is one of the things that we hit them with. So I have to go and speak to the teams every year, usually in the locker room, but this is what we always hit them with. Every year, there's about a 20% turnover in players. So if you think about it, we just had going to have the draft, did have the draft, but that's 60 players coming into the league. So there's 60 players leaving, and that's every year. It actually ends up being a little bit higher than that 60. It's actually a little closer to 90. But 50% of the players that come into the league are going to have careers 5 years or less. So that's a short time. Even the players that have long careers, even the players that end up with all the money in the world, they always start doing so. It may take them 2 or 3 years after they're done playing, but these are guys not just wired. Yeah, they love to play golf and do all that, but they're wired to do more.
Right.
We always see them coming back, looking for the next opportunity, developing themselves, and wanting to be active in something.
Yeah, but is there, when a player doesn't make the team or when they retire, what is that transition like for them? Because that was a lot of their life, right? And now all of a sudden they've got to, I mean, I love what you guys are doing. You're helping them find another passion while they're still playing. Back in the day, probably when you were playing, that wasn't there, right? So you retire and it's like, all right, what am I going to do? And maybe I'll try broadcast. I don't like broadcasting. But there is, it probably is, it's probably tough though still for players, right? Because whatever else they do, they're not going to have that much adulation and just, limelight and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's hard on many levels. So the younger players, if they don't make the NBA, some of them have opportunity to go play overseas and continue their career.
Yeah.
The older players, or if they're done with their career because of injury or whatever, there's a really difficult process that most go through. Most players are not retiring because one day they decide to retire. Mostly it's the phone stops ringing, opportunities, dry up.
Yeah.
But this has been a lifelong passion. And when you don't have that anymore, it's difficult. And there's really one of the things we do at the Players Association that I like so much is we have a mental health component. But when you get done playing, you're grieving because you're losing something that was near and dear to your heart and something that you probably spent more time doing than anything else. And that's where that, finding the next passion, I guess re-identifying yourself, all of those things that go into it. But it's hard. And I remember going through it. It was very difficult for me. I didn't have anyone to go to other than you. And that was by luck because that we had run into each other, but they didn't have these programs. It's one of the reasons I've been so happy to do this for so long is because when I came out not only did we not make the money they make now, but we didn't have any guidance, any direction, just kind of had to figure it out on your own. And these guys have so many opportunities now. It's just, there's always going to be the pain of leaving the game, but then, hopefully you're looking towards the next challenge.
Yeah. And I think in today's day and time, though, that's the norm for everybody. I think my first career, and I'm an older guy, but my first career is not what I'm doing now. My first career, I was a stockbroker, right? A financial advisor. And, then I came out, helped run Tony Robbins' company, and I go, I really like doing this. And I think, my daughter was in private equity. Now she's developing her own eco-friendly resort in Joshua Tree. So I think this is the way it is for everybody. What are the things, knowing that, what are the things, because people have many different careers, or at least a couple different careers in their lifetime. Imagine they're like your NBA player, you're talking to them. What do you tell them? What do you tell them as they embark on this journey, or as, maybe they're a little bit into it? What do you tell them? How do they manage through the ups and downs and the different things that are going to happen to them? The pace of change is so quick these days. AI, all these different things happening. How would you coach them?
Well, so for me, the first thing is really just trying to figure out who you are, what you want to do. And that may change. You're talking about career change, we all change and grow and develop. One of the nice things about players is I think they grow up more entrepreneurial in spirit, just because they've seen other NBA players. And I think just because changing basketball programs and AAU teams and high schools and colleges and all that so often. So for me, number one is just finding that passion.
Yeah.
We talked about that earlier, but just finding out the thing that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And trying to pursue that. And if it's an area that resonates with you and works for you, then you can grow from there. But then you kind of have your home base.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything is changing incredibly fast. But I've always found with players, it's much easier if they have that home base. This is what I do, or this is what I'm pursuing.
Yeah.
And then they can pick and choose what they want to bring in. And the great thing is, if at some point it doesn't work for them anymore, go through that process again. Well, what might?
Yeah.
And usually, so I don't know how it was for you being a stockbroker. If it was just, I don't want to do this anymore, let me see what else is out there. Or if it was something specific that caught your eye that you wanted to transition into. But a lot of guys, players, as they get involved things off the court, they'll come across something else if what they're doing is not really something hitting home from that looks really interesting to them. Yeah. And then they'll make that transition and that step. And we work really hard to make sure that they're doing it in a responsible way. Obviously, number one is just making sure finances are set, and that you're, if you're having to do something you don't want to do to get to where you want to go, then that's part of the process as well. But I just always focus things around, what are you interested in? What difference do you want to make? Where do you want to contribute? And let's start there at home base. Yeah.
Well, it is interesting, because when I was, I thought being a stockbroker was my job. And the only reason was because I had a friend of my dad's, actually his name was Mr. Woodbury. And I wrote in the Breakthrough Code, I used his name to honor him, but he was a great friend to our family after my father passed away. And he was not only a stockbroker, he was like the head of Dean Witter, a big brokerage firm back in the day. And he was general manager of Dean Witter. And so I looked up to him because we had no money. And I'm like, wow, he's really successful. He's really a nice human being. He, helped take care of our family in some ways. And I want to do that. And so I aspired to I had no idea what you did, right? As a matter of fact, I still remember going up to Charlotte, North Carolina, to almost like an audition for a job with Merrill Lynch. And I was just out of school. Most people don't become stockbrokers right out of school, or financial advisors. They get some experience. And so you had to, put on a suit. You had to go in there, and they had the stockbrokers that worked there, it was like on a Saturday, they would come in and they would be your potential clients, and they were brutal, right? Because they would get beat up all week. So I'm this little 22-year-old guy. I'm sweating. I had a headache, right? I left there so defeated, and I was horrible. And the guy said, I remember I didn't get hired by Merrill Lynch, but I remember the guy telling me, he said, he goes, because he really wanted me. Like, I interviewed, and this guy sent me up from another office to the main place to get, go through this process. And he said, I really wanted to hire you, but you didn't do well in that thing, so I can't hire you. And I was so defeated. But then I got hired by another firm, and I didn't even realize, I thought you just managed money. I didn't realize you had to get on a call, just call someone like you, some NBA player, somebody you don't even know, and they're hanging up on you. I'm like, wow, this is not what I imagined. Like, just like a lot of people don't imagine an athlete, they think you're just going and playing a game. They don't see you're up in the morning lifting weights and grinding, and after games you're doing all this stuff, and then you're traveling to another city, not getting sleep. They don't see any of that. And so I was shocked, but I did it, and I kind of overcame myself. I did it for 3 years. I became one of the top brokers in that firm I was in. And then I was just like, this is not my purpose. This is not what I meant, what I think I'm meant to do. And I literally was watching a morning TV show, which I never did. It was like the Today Show or something way back when. And this guy comes on, and he just written a new book. It's called Unlimited Power. His name is Tony Robbins. I had no idea who this guy was, but he's talking about you can choose how you feel, and you've got this power inside of you. And so I'm thinking, I need to read that book. That guy's just a little bit older than I am. I want to read that book. And I go to the bookstore where I live. They didn't have it, so they ordered it. And I read it in like 2 or 3 days, and I'm like, this is what I want to do. But even that, when I came out here and I'm helping to run sales and marketing, I didn't realize you had to stand up in front of people and speak to them. I'm like, that's not what I do. And I didn't want to do it, but I had to do that. I had to step into that. And now I do it for a living. So it's interesting. I think sometimes you think you know what you want, but you have to have a growth mindset. And I love what you guys do. You introduce people into lots of different things so they can really decide, not just have a narrow point of view that this is who I am, what I want, because we're always more than that. And when we start to see different possibilities, something might click.
It's and to like, from what I said here, that's to me really where the magic is. That's
Yeah.
when players do that. You mentioned Tony Robbins. Let me tell you a quick story about my Tony Robbins experience.
Yeah.
Since this is all about breakthrough. So I had an opportunity to try out for the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a long shot because they were already really successful. Their team was pretty established.
Mm-hmm.
I had thought about going over to Europe. I ended up getting injured in the summer. So I kept this opportunity to try out for the Lakers. It was going to be more of a for training camp and just kind of a body there. But 2 weeks before the camp, Tony Robbins he used to do the fire walk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He still does. Yeah.
So like a moron, I'm up there fire walking 2 weeks away from my dream tryout with the Lakers.
Could have got blisters on your feet.
Yeah.
I don't care. Right?
But that was really a catalyst for me. Not just the fire walk was cool.
Yeah.
But just the whole, the 2 days that we were there, 2 or 3 days or whatever it was, but just it was a good way to go into that. And it really talked about expanding your mindset and expanding what's capable. And you start thinking about what could be instead of, it's a long shot and changing the mindset. But
and then you made the team.
And I made the team. Yeah.
And you got a ring to show for it.
I sure do.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. Well, it's been so awesome seeing you again, my friend. And what final parting words would you leave everybody with, maybe in the realm of the mind and the ability that they all have and the ability to break through? Any final thoughts you can just leave everybody with?
Well, one thing, so I had, for basketball, I had a sports psychologist who was a great mentor to me, Dr. Bob Rattel, who's written many
Mhm.
books, works with golfers quite a bit.
Yeah.
He always said to me, anybody who's great at anything was just a kid at one point who got it in their head that they somehow could be great, and they
Yeah.
just worked to do it. That always stuck with me, not only for basketball, but just in anything. And I think when we have something that we want to go for,
Mhm.
something that we can see and visualize, to me, the work, it kind of falls into place. But when you have that one thing that you're looking for, that
Yeah.
you're passionate about, that you want to achieve or accomplish, then to me, that's the starting point of everything. Like I've mentioned a couple times here, that's home base.
Yeah.
I very rarely have seen people who have gone, for something that was meaningful to them, who didn't ultimately succeed. And
Yeah.
the thing that's crazy that I found is, even if they didn't succeed, it led them someplace else that
Mm.
they were even happier. It was kind of the
Oh,
doorway to get them to this other place. So
that's
I guess
good.
that would be it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And that's in the breakthrough code. That's what we talk about, focus on less, like figure out not a million things that you want to be great at, because that's to be really hard to do if impossible. But figure out what are one, two, maybe three at the most areas or results that you want to accomplish, and then go big, go all in, believe that you're already there, and then take effective action to get you there. And you're right. I find the same thing whenever, and it's just what I've seen. It's what I've seen in human beings that have done great things. That's what they've done. Were they great at everything in their life? No. I mean, they could find an area that they want to be great at that maybe they're not right now, and focus in and use the same process. But, I tell people, like, I'm not a great dancer, and I'm not focused on being a great dancer. I mean, maybe you are, Jeff, but that's not going to be one of my areas in life. I mean, I'm okay. I can, but I'm not going to be great at it. And it's okay with me. I'm not worried about that. There's other areas, I think, that are more in tune with who I am and what I want to give in this lifetime, that I'm going to be going after. So it's been so great having you on. I got to see you in person now. It's been a while since
Yep.
we've seen each other in person, but thanks so much for being with us. It's really been great.
Tom, thank you for having me on. It's been an honor. And I will say, I use a lot of your stuff with my players. Your breakthrough code book was great, and just more tools to work with the players. So thank you for having me. Appreciate your work. Appreciate you.
Thank you.